At the family barbecue, my sister called me irrelevant, and then Uncle Dave raised his glass and said my name first. The grill smoke mixed with laughter that didn't include me. Plates clattered, kids screamed, someone dropped a beer. Can. I stood near the cooler, sipping soda, not beer, just in case they needed a designated driver again. They never asked. They always assumed I would do it. I wasn't supposed to stay long. I had told myself that on the drive over. Just a quick appearance, smile for the sake of peace, then vanish like usual. But something in me lingered. Maybe I was hoping, against logic, to be seen differently this time. Chloe walked in an hour late, wearing heels and a sundress like it was a movie set. The energy shifted instantly. Mom stood to greet her. Dad actually got off his chair. People clapped on for her arrival. I stayed seated. No one noticed. I might as well have been lawn furniture. They asked about her new job, the one Dad helped her get, the promotion, the trip to Miami. No one asked what I'd been doing. I had just gotten certified in clinical research, finished 2 projects. But I learned long ago not to bring it up. Achievements only count if Chloe does them. The cousins gathered near the grill. Chloe told a story that painted her as the star, as usual. Then someone asked about college. She laughed and said, "Well, not everyone needs 5 degrees to feel relevant." Her voice was light, but her eyes flicked toward me. I didn't blink. A few chuckled. Mom looked proud. I looked at the grass. The silence afterward was louder than any insult. I wanted anyone, to say something. But no one did. That's when I realized, in this family, silence isn't absence, it's agreement. Then she said it. Loud enough for the group, like she wanted it recorded. Honestly, some people are just irrelevant. And again, that look. No name. Just a slash across my chest, clean and practiced. I froze. No fight left, just breath held in shame. I didn't move, didn't cry. I stood there like part of the fence. Something useful, background, unnoticed. My fingers clenched the soda can so tightly it dented. Still, no one came. No one said my name. That kind of hurt doesn't scream. It sinks. That's when Uncle Dave raised his glass. Calm, clear. His voice cut through the noise. "Before we eat," he said, "I want to toast the one person here who shows up for everyone, never asks for praise, and still holds her head high. To Olivia." My name. It was the first time I'd heard it spoken with pride in years. Chloe's face didn't move, but her eyes narrowed. Mom blinked fast. Dad looked away. And me? I stood still. Not with shame this time. With something sharper. I was still here. And finally, they couldn't ignore it. Growing up, I was the quiet one. Not because I had nothing to say, but because no one ever listened. Chloe cried louder, demanded more, took up space like it belonged to her. I learned early that my job was to adapt, shrink, make room. Mom said I was low maintenance. She meant it as a compliment. "You never gave me trouble like Chloe," she'd say. But what she called peace was just absence. I didn't rebel. I excelled quietly, got good grades, helped clean, stayed out of the way. And they forgot me because of it. Chloe was the daughter they brought to dinner parties, the one they dressed up like a doll. I was the one they left home to babysit myself. If she got a B on a test, they took her out for ice cream. When I got straight A's, Mom said, "That's what we expect from you." I tried harder, took AP classes, got into college early, paid for most of it through scholarships and side jobs. When Chloe went to college, they posted about it for days, sent her care packages. When I left, no one even helped carry my suitcase. Dad called Chloe his little star. He used to joke that I was the family accountant, the serious one, the organizer, the fallback. I smiled through it, laughed when they made me the punchline. But that role gets heavy when no one checks if you're tired of holding it. Holidays were always the same. Chloe got the spotlight, the best gifts, the front seat in every photo. I got socks, candles, and comments like, You're so responsible, as if responsibility was a personality. I stopped hoping for surprises. I learned how to be okay with leftovers. I remember one Christmas when Chloe got a gold necklace. She opened it and cried. I got a planner. When I looked at Mom confused, she said, "You love practical things." As if that was the same as being seen. As if usefulness was love. Even in family stories, I didn't exist. At barbecues, reunions, holidays, every retelling starred Chloe. I was either misremembered or not mentioned at all. Like I lived in the margins of their memories. Present, but not part of the picture. It got to a point where I stopped correcting them. Why bother reminding people who you are when they've already decided what version of you fits their story? I stopped fighting for a seat at the table. I stood behind it instead, serving plates, refilling drinks, nodding at the right times. But silence doesn't mean I forgot. I remembered everything. Every time they skipped my name, every time they laughed at my effort and praised her bare minimum. And that day at the barbecue, when she said I was irrelevant, it wasn't new. It was just finally said out loud. The red flags were never explosions. They were slow drips, steady, cold, dismissive. Like when Mom would show Chloe's Instagram posts to everyone, gushing over outfits I helped her pick, then turn to me and ask, "Are you still working? At that little job of yours?" When Chloe needed money, it was called support. When I needed money, it was called poor planning. Once I borrowed $200 during college for books. Dad made me sign a repayment note. Chloe once overdrew won $200 from their joint account. They called it a learning moment. Mom never asked if I was dating anyone. Not out of respect, but disinterest. Chloe changed boyfriends like outfits, and every name got remembered, even the ones who ghosted her. I once brought someone serious to Thanksgiving. They forgot his name by dessert. When I bought my first used car, I was so proud. I parked it in their driveway and waited for someone to notice. No one did. 2 years later, they gave Chloe a brand new SUV for her birthday. I watched through the kitchen window as she cried and jumped in Dad's arms. Chloe had a habit of borrowing things and forgetting to return them. Clothes, chargers, once even my ID to get into a bar. When I confronted her, she laughed and said, "You're so dramatic." Mom agreed. "You always take things so personally, as if being erased was my own fault." Anytime I spoke up, they made it about my tone. "You sound bitter, Olivia. Don't ruin the mood. Why can't you just be happy for your sister?" I started questioning myself. Was I bitter? Or just tired of being invisible in rooms I helped clean? They called me jealous if I asked for fairness. Sensitive if I got quiet. Cold if I didn't smile. I learned how to wear a mask so well I forgot what my real face looked like. Chloe never had to explain herself. She got to be. I had to prove I deserved to be there. Dad once joked at a family dinner, "We'll put Olivia in charge of the boring stuff. She loves that." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I felt the same dull throb I always did. I was the joke they thought was useful. The seat filler. The reliable disappointment. Uncle Dave was the only one who ever really looked at me. Not deeply, but enough. He once asked if I liked working in research. I told him yes. He nodded and said, "Sounds important." That's all. 2 words. But they stuck. Because in this family, being noticed was rare currency. So when Chloe called me irrelevant at that barbecue, it didn't break me. It confirmed everything. Every little moment that chipped away at my worth suddenly had a name. Irrelevant. That's what they saw. That's what I was to them. Until Uncle Dave stood up and said otherwise. She said it while holding a drink I poured. That was the part that hit me later. How even in the moment she tried to erase me, I was still the one holding things together. Chloe stood near the grill, laughing, sipping, glowing under the lights. They all pointed at her. "Some people are just irrelevant," she repeated. Not angry, not joking, just loud enough to echo. Her voice floated across the backyard like smoke. Thin, sharp, lingering. I waited for someone to step in. For Mom to say, "That's not fair." For Dad to change the subject. No one did. I looked around. Some cousins turned their heads. One aunt winced, then looked down at her salad. Most just kept eating, like I wasn't standing right there, like I didn't deserve even the basic dignity of acknowledgement. That's when the heat rushed to my face, not from shame, but exposure. I set down the soda can and walked to the edge of the yard. Not away, not quite, just far enough to disappear in plain sight. That's what I'd been trained to do. When humiliated, make yourself smaller, quieter, less of a problem. It's what they expected from me. Chloe didn't look my way again. She didn't have to. She knew the power of her words, and so did everyone else. That kind of humiliation doesn't need volume, just agreement. Their silence wasn't passive. It was permission. A green light to disrespect me openly. What broke me wasn't her words. It was the look on Mom's face. Not surprised, not disapproving, just entertained. Like Chloe had said something cheeky. A little spicy, sure, but forgivable. Mom even smirked. That smirk cut deeper than the word itself. Dad kept eating. A man who would rather chew meat than speak up for his own daughter. I wondered in that moment if they even remembered my birthday. If they would notice if I left. If they'd clean my name off the family tree the same way they cleaned the grill after dinner. But then Uncle Dave stood, glass in hand. His chair scraped loudly against the concrete. For a second, I thought he'd join them, that he'd make a joke to lighten the mood. But his voice was steady, clear. "Before we eat," he said, and the air shifted like a storm cloud moving in. He didn't look at Chloe. He didn't look at Mom or Dad. He looked at me. "To Olivia," he said, "the one who shows up without needing applause, who listens more than she speaks, and who, despite everything, still holds her head higher than most ever could." There was a beat of silence, then the sound of forks, pausing, then a slow, quiet clap. One cousin, then another. Someone murmured, "Damn." Chloe's face didn't change, but her eyes did. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. I didn't cry at the barbecue. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. I've learned how to hold pain in my throat like it's part of breathing, how to keep my eyes dry while my heart screams behind them. But when I got home, I collapsed. Shoes still on, I sank onto the kitchen floor like gravity had finally caught me. The silence of my apartment was deafening. No fake laughs, no secondhand smoke. No one watching me out of the corner of their eye, waiting to see if I'd break. Stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, replaying her voice. Irrelevant. The word echoed so loud it drowned out every good thing I'd ever done. Every quiet sacrifice, every unnoticed effort, wiped out in a single sentence delivered with a smirk. I opened my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Not even from Mom. Especially not from Mom. That told me everything. She had watched it happen, watched me stand there with my dignity bleeding out, and didn't move. And that's when the pain turned into something else. Clarity. I deleted the family group chat. Archived every photo where I was the one holding the camera while Chloe posed. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired, yes. But something underneath was still standing. Something sharp. Unapologetic. I called Leah. She answered on the second ring. "What happened?" she asked, and that was all it took. The flood came. I told her everything. The barbecue, the word, the toast. Her silence was different. It wasn't passive. It was protective. You know that says more about them than you, right? But it still hurt. Knowing your family sees you as disposable, that kind of wound doesn't bleed. It festers. I kept thinking back to the birthdays forgotten, the favors never returned, the way I had to beg for crumbs of affection while Chloe was served feasts. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology. What I wanted was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the imbalance. And Uncle Dave, in one sentence, gave me that. just by saying my name out loud in a space where it was never meant to be honored, I couldn't go back to pretending. Not after that. Not after someone outside the circle saw me clearly. That toast broke something open in me. Not just pain, but possibility. If he could see me, maybe others could too. Maybe I wasn't as invisible as they wanted me to believe. So, I stopped crying, wiped my face, and pulled out a notebook. I started writing down every time they'd ignored me, used me, dismissed me. Not to dwell, but to remember. Not to attack, but to finally tell my story. One they couldn't edit or erase. I didn't need to look far to confirm what I already knew. The favoritism wasn't just emotional. It was structural. In every family decision, every plan, every redistribution of resources, I was either excluded or expected to carry the weight quietly. I just hadn't documented it before, so I started digging. Not out of vengeance, out of clarity. I opened old emails, old texts, photos, bank transfers. I found Venmo requests from Chloe asking me to spot her for things I never got paid back for. I saw family plans where I wasn't included, but was tagged in the thank you posts. Remembered the time Chloe moved apartments and they asked me to help her pack, drive, clean, all while they flew out to meet her for a housewarming dinner. I ate takeout alone that night, still wearing gloves from scrubbing her bathroom. I found the text, "You're a lifesaver." That was it. There were vacation photos where I was the one watching the pets, watering the plants while they smiled, on beaches with cocktails. Not once had I been invited. I was the background assistant to their good times, invisible but essential, forgotten but expected. Even in the will, yes, I found a draft once on Dad's desk. Chloe had been listed as the primary beneficiary. I was labeled practical support, like I was a hired hand, not a daughter. I took a picture, just in case. It was the kind of detail that says everything in silence. The more I collected, the angrier I wasn't. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel rage, but what I felt was freedom. The proof didn't hurt, it validated. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't imagining it. I had receipts, decades of them. They couldn't gaslight me anymore. I shared some of it with Leah. She blinked slowly. "You could write a memoir," she said. "Call it The Invisible Sister." We both laughed, but there was a sadness under it. Because how many women carry these stories, undocumented, unvalidated, until they forget their own worth? I wasn't planning to confront anyone, not directly. I just wanted to own my story, quietly, fully. I started writing, not a journal, a record, pages and pages of details, names, years, words said and unsaid. Not for them, for me. So I would never doubt my own memory again. But then something unexpected happened. Uncle Dave called. "I've been thinking about what happened at the barbecue," he said. And I just wanted to say, I saw it. All of it. Not just that day. For years. My breath caught. He said, "I should have spoken up sooner." And suddenly, the story wasn't mine alone anymore. Someone else had been watching. And now they were ready to speak too. Uncle Dave didn't just call. He followed through. 2 weeks later, he hosted another gathering. Smaller, just close family. He said it was to clear the air. I knew something was coming, but I didn't know what. Still, I went. Not for them, for myself. The moment I walked in, I felt it, the shift. Uncle Dave greeted me first, hugged me, made space beside him at the table. Chloe arrived 20 minutes later, sunglasses on, loud as ever. Mom followed, bringing her usual energy, warm smiles that never reached me. Dinner was calm at first. Surface talk. Then Dave stood up again. This time, no glass in hand, just a folder. "Before dessert, I want to say something," he said. The room quieted. My chest tightened. Chloe looked mildly amused. That didn't last. He read from a paper, his own observations. Times he'd seen me pushed aside, overlooked, used. "It's easy to ignore someone when they don't complain," he said, "but that doesn't make it right." My name came up over and over, not as background, as center. Mom tried to interrupt. Dave, this isn't necessary. But he kept going. Calm, steady. Olivia never asked for more than basic respect, and it's time we stopped pretending she was treated the same. He handed me the folder. This is your record. I just helped write it. Inside were printed emails, photos, notes he'd made, things he remembered, dates, names, words, proof. Someone had been paying attention, and now so was everyone else. Chloe's face cracked, just slightly. Dad looked down. Mom said nothing. Then he turned to the table. We're going to fix this, not with gifts, with recognition, with change. He turned to me last. Olivia, you deserve better, and I should have said it a long time ago. For a second, no one moved. Then someone clapped. A cousin. Then another. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about reversal. Not in cruelty, but in clarity. They had made me invisible in public for years. Now the truth was being spoken aloud, in the same space where I was once erased. And this time, my name wasn't missing. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just breathed. The kind of breath that feels like returning to your own body after years of being a ghost in it. I stood and said, "Thank you, Uncle Dave. That's more than I ever got from my own parents." And I meant every word. They didn't respond. Not right away. But it didn't matter. The power had shifted. I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. I had the truth. I had a witness. And most of all, I had myself. After that night, something inside me realigned. Not overnight, but enough that I started walking differently. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying someone else's shame for years and finally set it down. My reflection didn't change, but I looked at her with softer eyes. I didn't return to family dinners. Not right away. And when I did, I came late, left early, brought my own car, my own exit. I didn't sit in the corner or serve drinks. I took a seat at the table. The one they used to forget I existed at. And I never asked for permission again. Chloe stayed distant for a while. The shine in her confidence dimmed just a little. She never apologized, but she never called me irrelevant again either. Because now she knew someone was watching. Someone besides me. Someone who would say my name out loud if she tried it again. Mom sent a message weeks later. Short. Hope you're well. No apology. Just a sentence tossed like a bone to a stray dog. I didn't reply. Not because I was bitter, but because I finally understood that silence can be power too. And this time, it was mine. Dad tried small talk at a family birthday. I answered politely, then walked away mid-sentence. Not rudely, just enough to let him feel what I had felt for years, forgotten, mid-thought, dismissed without explanation. I didn't need revenge. I needed symmetry. Uncle Dave and I started having lunch monthly. He never acted like a hero, just a man who saw something wrong and decided to name it. You know, he said once, your strength scared them more than they'll ever admit. I smiled, not out of pride, but recognition. I started writing again. Not a memoir, not yet. Just stories, fragments, versions of myself I had hidden in silence. I wrote the truth, not the one they told at barbecues, but the one I lived in the backyards of their pride. It felt like reclaiming oxygen. One day, I walked past a mirror at work and didn't look away. I stood still, saw the woman I became, whole, sharp, tired, but unbroken. They tried to erase me by ignoring me, but the truth is, I grew stronger in their blind spot. And now I'm no longer in it. I used to think being unseen was my fault. That if I just worked harder, spoke softer, smiled more, they'd love me. But now I know I was never invisible. They just chose not to look. And now that I've named it, they can never unsee me again. Because today, the girl they called irrelevant walks into every room like she owns her name. And she does.